the Department of Foreign Affairs is now in order. Comsec Babia, will you please introduce the guest?
Unmute.
Joe Mark, you're on mute. Joe Mark, please
Yes, sir.
unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Our guest for this afternoon, we have the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Secretary Teodoro L. Locsin Jr., and the Undersecretary for Civilian Security and Consular Concerns, Yusek Brigido Dulay. Special Assistant, Office of the Undersecretary for Administration, Ms. Irish K. Calao Ado. Principal Assistant, Office of the Undersecretary for Migrant Workers Affairs, Mr. Armand Dulay. Acting Director, Office of the Assistant Secretary for Human Resources Management Office, Ms. Rapunzel Ako. Executive Director, Office of Asia and Pacific Affairs, Ms. Joselle F. Ignacio. Executive Director, Office of American Affairs, Mr. Romulo Israel Jr. Director, Office of American Affairs, Mr. Rodney Jonas Sumage. Undersecretary for International Economic Relations, Yusek Lourdes Iparagire. Office of the Undersecretary for International Economic Relations, ASEC J. Susana Paes. Office of Financial Management Service, ASEC Myla Makahilig. Executive Director of Office of ASEAN Affairs, Ms. Marian Joy Tirol Ignacio. Office of Strategic and Communications and Research, Ms. Ivy Banson. Office of the Treaties and Legal Affairs, Executive Director, Ms. Acela Arumpak Marte. Office of Treaties and Legal Affairs, we have Director Janina Bustos. Office of Policy Planning and Coordination, Acting Director, Ms. Monica Camille Limpo. Office of Consular Affairs, Principal Assistant, Ms. Hannah Go. Department Legislative Liaison Unit, Acting Head, Attorney Voltaire Mauricio. And the attached agency, sir, UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines, Deputy Executive Director, Ms. Lindsay Barrientos. Foreign Service Institute, Budget Officer, Ms. Mary Ann Faigao. Technical Cooperation Council of the Philippines, Planning Officer, Mr. Manuel Almira. And Presidential Commission on Visiting Forces, Yusek Pedro Cesar Rambuonga. That's all, sir.
I think with us today is Senator Frank Rilon, Senator Marcos, and Senator Villanueva. Is that it? Is that it, Senator Go? Will the committee secretary indicate whether there are other senators present in the hall?
Senator Manny Pacquiao, sir, is already present, sir.
But he is in his boxing attire. I don't know if we're going to watch him fight here today. But
I'm just listening.
And Senator Bongo, sir.
yes, I mentioned Senator Bongo already. I will just make a brief statement. Welcome to all our distinguished officials of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Certainly one of the most important, if not the most important agency or cabinet position in the government. It was John Kennedy who said domestic policy can defeat us, foreign policy can kill us. And in the conduct of foreign policy, it's always important, as Lord Palmerston once said, that there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, there are just permanent interests. And it is the Department of Foreign Affairs that advises and discusses with the president the matter of what is in the national interest. He's the one that interprets it, because she's the eyes and ears to our embassies all over the world, and through their contacts and through their listening outposts or listening closely to the ground. They must be able to give us a read on what is happening in the world, particularly on the matters of national security, things that may affect our independence and our ability to work with autonomy and that will allow the preservation and enhancement of the national security. Of course, the promotion and attainment of economic security has become less of a, from what I hear, become less of it's important, but it's not. It's become less uh, crucial. Although I believe it should always remain crucial because, like security, they must the department must be able to feed the information to the leaders of this country on which investments could be approached or which countries can be approached for investments and what are the trends prevailing in the respective posts that the Philippines can adopt or can compete with, or what kind of products we can sell abroad, among others. And of course, the third one is the rights and promotion of the welfare and interests of Filipinos overseas. At times, I think that the Department of Foreign Affairs is taken for granted. We're granted. It's only remembered when people get passports or when they have problems among their relatives in other countries. Uh, but it's really a lot more important than that. It is not a position, it is action, as somebody once said. And the Department of Foreign Affairs has always had that situation where they act rather than just talk or whether they just invoke their title. I said already, their eyes and ears to the whole world, and they must listen to the footsteps of the world. Independent foreign policy means you can do things with other countries where you are not beholden to anyone, that you can do things in the best interest of our nation. Having said all that, distinguished colleagues, members of the Foreign Affairs community, I would now like to open the formal hearing. I'd like to hear some remarks from Secretary Teddy Locsin to present the overview of what are the uh, thrust of the Department of Foreign Affairs these days. Thank you. Secretary Locsin is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Am I on? Okay. Senator Gordon, honorable members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to brief you on the 21.96 billion budget of the Department of Foreign Affairs for 2021. We will be operating on a budget that is 9.3% less than our 2020 budget, which was at 24.22 billion. The budget will fund the operations, programs, and projects of the DFA headquarters, our 94 foreign service posts, and 35 consular offices in various parts of the country. We have opened 6 new posts this year: Stockholm, Rabat, Melbourne, Nagoya, Istanbul, Barcelona, and we need resources to get them fully operational next year. We were scheduled to open 4 new consular offices in Antique, Olongapo, Tarlac, Zamboanga del Sur this year. With the mandatory budget cuts due to the pandemic, we were not able to do so. We need the funds reinstated so we can open these offices next year. Our budget goes towards programs and engagements with governments and international partners to safeguard our sovereignty and territory, pursue economic development opportunities for our people, promote the Philippines as a tourist, a business and investment destination, and protect our 10.4 million nationals overseas. The pandemic has caused the postponement of many bilateral and multilateral political and economic activities and initiatives. But the DFA's work continues with efforts focused on assisting thousands of displaced OFWs who lost their jobs. To date, we have repatriated 208,059 overseas Filipinos and facilitated the return of the remains of 141. have used up 96.99% of the Assistance to Nationals Fund. For the DFA to continue to execute its mandate, I seek the support of the honorable members of the Senate Committee on Finance for the DFA's budget of 21.96 billion. I would like to request Assistant Secretary Myla Makahili of our Office of Financial Management Services to present the details of the proposed 21.96 billion budget, as well as additional projects that we hope the Senate will reconsider and for which it will provide funds. The representatives of our attached agencies are also present to respond to any questions on the respective budgets. Now, on foreign policy, I am available. You ask me the question and I'll answer it as best I can. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Senator Drilon, and I was going to accommodate him, but I will accommodate Senator Go because he promises to make a very short manifestation, if that is all right with my good friend Senator Drilon. Senator Go? Senator Go? Well, Senator Go is not here. The chair recognizes Senator Drilon, the distinguished gentleman from Manay, and the minority floor leader and erstwhile Senate President. In truth, he is really the majority floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and let me personally welcome once more the Secretary of Foreign Affairs to this committee hearing and in the Senate. Mr. Secretary, I have very few questions on your budget. In fact, I just asked for a few policy issues. First, let me spread into the record my support for your position on the sale of our real properties in Tokyo. Indeed, I want to put into the record my commendation for such stand that you have taken. And also the second issue on your stand in Sabah. But having said that, Mr. Chairman, would the good secretary intimate to us why is there a regular effort? It happens every administration that somebody tries to sell these properties in Tokyo. Why, Mr. Secretary? Can you share with us your thoughts on this? The good Senator Drilon knows, it's been my fate to always be involved in this thing. Remember, in the time of President Cory Aquino, I wanted to be friends with everybody, but the people in the Makati Business Club, they were the first, and they came up with this notion of selling the properties. And it just seems wrong because, one, there are many other sources of funds for what they wanted, although at that time there was still no sale of the BCDA for veterans, that would come later under Ramos. But I just thought that it's like throwing away your memory for a one-time deal. This is memory of the worst years of our life, and also the beginning of the best relationships we have had with a foreign country. Japan has always been a constant friend. So it is both a memory of the bad times we had and the memory of the good times we're having with Japan as our main partner in development. There are countries of extraordinary generosity. Why give it away? Second, the properties are not that great. I mean, it's just there. It is really more memory than anything else. And they serve our purposes. What will you get out of that? I can think of other things we can sell from. I understand government has many properties. When I was in Malacanang, that was a sense I had, and I'm sure the good senator knows that because he was. I don't flatter him when I say that he was probably the best executive secretary we had. He just got everything moving so fast, and I just don't know why it happens all the time. It comes up again and again. But the hardest, the biggest challenge really was actually in the time when I was in the palace. We were able to stop it. Then after that, it would crop up once in a while, and then people would react, and then it would drop. So I hope it's
states that way. I don't want to sign that something.
I was going to say before Senator Drilon states that that is one of the obvious and flatteries I've ever heard. Anyway, go ahead, please.
You know, Senator Gordon, I think when you were our boss in Accra, I think you should have fired him.
Go ahead. Frank, go ahead. Senator Frank, go ahead.
You always out me. Anyway, Senator Dillon, that's my view. Just let it go. It's part of our memory. It's part of our history.
Yes.
The public was born out of that struggle.
That's very
And,
good.
by the way, we have also other properties. And once in a while, I get approached by people, and then the first thing they say is, I always get worried when they say, Tito, you know, you have this property, can I buy it? I said, you know, I really get worried when people call me uncle, because I know what's following. It's always a proposal like that. I always say no. This is the heritage of our country. This is our presence abroad. And many of those properties are not great commercial properties, but they do represent us. And many have historical roots and historical associations. So I hope we just leave these things alone and proceed, especially the DFA, which I learned this when I was congressman. I would always ask them, because they took care of us congressmen when we traveled. I said, why did you ask for something? What I always noticed about the DFA was the modesty of the requests. When I would prod them, they said, just leave it alone. We have worked with this budget and we can continue working with it. So whatever the DFA has now, just let them keep it. So that I don't want to be the guy who leaves and people will say, oh, he's the guy who lost it. That's all, sir.
Thank you very much, Secretary Locsin. Thank you for that explanation. I am just, I find it comforting that the Supreme Court has ruled that before this property can be sold, it would need an enabling statute. And I note the position of the Secretary submitted to the House, where in the committee where these bills are pending, strongly opposing the sale and the enactment of the statute which would authorize the sale. And in the Senate, we will support the position of the good secretary, because we really believe that, you know, it's more than, it's not just a piece of real estate that we're looking at. We're looking at part of the Philippine history when we go to Tokyo. So now the other issue that I would like the secretary to share his thoughts with us is, we read in the newspapers, first, again, we support the position of the secretary on the Sabah claim. Indeed, he has taken a very clear position that this is part of our territory, consistent with our constitution and supported by historical facts. But I'm curious, Mr. Secretary. I read in the papers that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Malaysia summoned our ambassador. May we know, if you can share with us what transpired during that meeting, where the Foreign Affairs Minister presumably discussed the Sabah claim with our ambassador.
I'd heard about that there was going to be a summons on our ambassador in Kuala Lumpur. So I immediately fired back and said, okay, I'm going to call in the Malaysian ambassador. But then later on, I also discovered that in fact our ambassador there was only speaking to someone not of the rank of the minister. So okay, I said, well, we'll leave it at that. What really triggered this was a post where they were talking about the repatriation of Filipinos. There's a poor choice of words from that place, which is ours, but ascribed it as belonging to another country. And I got angry and I said, take down that post. And they did it. But then coincidentally, Secretary Pompeo called up. So I said, tell your people to be careful. because that is something very sensitive to Filipinos. And then we said, leave it alone, Teddy boy. I'm gonna take care of that, and that was the end of that post.
Oh,
And the reason that what happened to that claim is it was started by Diosdado Macapagal, started by my father. They campaigned very hard on it, and then when Marcos won, what do you know? It was the reason why my father, who wasn't crazy about Marcos, had opened himself to Marcos, because Marcos showed that he was determined to pursue the Sabah claim in the most vigorous way you can imagine. And so it went. And then Marcos became a dictator. Did you think he would railroaded it? No, he never abandoned it. He could have just dropped it. And there were always talks that could be compromised by Malaysian interests. And it's one of the things I admired, the man who, frankly, jailed my dad. But at least he stood by my country and the things that my father believed in foreign affairs. And then after that, with the time of Cory, okay, kind of tapered off. Nobody was talking about it. It seemed to have been put in the back burner, but that's fine. However, when this issue happened about this posting in the internet, and I fired back, and Malaysia reacted, all the more. And one thing I don't like is, frankly, between us, is the almost patronizing attitude that our neighbors in Southeast Asia take towards our claim. Excuse me. I'm an old man, and I remember. But there was a time when we were feared for our strength, for our valor, for the fact that we were never defeated in battle. And I don't like people who have never won a single conflict, not even a civil conflict, looking down on us as if we couldn't vindicate whatever we claim. We're just friendly. But I don't like that attitude they have. And that's why, while I believe in ASEAN amity and unity and all of that, it's not the be-all and end-all of my foreign policy. And that is always the pride of my country and the national interest. We'll continue. And what I've done is said, I'm going to resurrect the North Borneo Bureau. There are some administrative details to attend to, but something like that to keep it alive and that it is not going to be forgotten. And I certainly will not be the one who will lose it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for that clarification. Just on your budget, I noticed your report that right now we have 94 foreign posts, and you are proposing 3 more from your report. Okay. I just forgot what the 3 were. One is Addis Ababa, and the 2 others were
Ethiopia.
And Nur Sultan.
Nur Sultan, and the 3rd one,
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka.
Yes.
For the record, Mr. Secretary, can you please state what are the considerations that the department would take into account when you decide to open foreign posts? For example, the case of the last 3, can you just that you have mentioned as a possible new posts, foreign posts that we have? Can you just spread into the record for our guidance? What are the considerations?
Well, what I noticed, I come from the outside. I'm not career, and I noticed that the posts are there. They're all traditional posts, and when I was in the United Nations, I realized the power of Africa, and the number of countries there. They all have the same vote as the biggest powers. One.
Count for 4.
That's one. And then I realized that these are all going to be hardship posts, and that I want our young diplomats to get a chance to cut their teeth in foreign assignment. And this is where they will go. I mean, the other posts in Europe, these are comfortable posts. They have tremendous duties. We have people in Europe, and we have to attend to their needs. But I thought that we need to build up our core of diplomats, not only based on their tremendous intelligence and education, but on their experience. And there's nothing like posts in hardship places. Definitely, Addis Ababa would be one of the centers. I wouldn't mind spreading more across the African continent. Sri Lanka is a measure of our the president of Sri Lanka came over, and it's a measure of our amity with Sri Lanka. So the exchange of promises was made, and that's one reason it's there. For the others, Nur Sultan, I'm open to.
So am I correct? Am I correct, Mr. Secretary, that these posts are primary political listening posts? I don't recall that we have much of a commercial activity in these three countries, nor do we have a significant number of overseas Filipino workers. So apart from the fact that it would expose our young diplomats to the real world of diplomacy, the posts that we're putting up are more of a political listening post. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, that's right. It will be they're principally listening posts, but on the other hand, in this pandemic, we realized how many Filipinos we've had to repatriate from Africa, and also I've learned the course of many years. We have common friends. The Filipino presence in African business, different countries, including the Congo. For example, the Filipino jeepney, which is apparently going to disappear from our historical sites and practices and traditions. It's very strong in Africa, and they are Filipino. I have talked to businessmen and I've asked them to, in my travels, personal travels, and they said, "Where are you?" They wanted to take a picture with me. I said, "Why? Where are you going?" They said, "I'm going back to the Sudan." I said, "What are you doing?" "I have a chain of grocery stores." This is what a place to go. He says, "Aren't you afraid they'll kill you?" I said, "No, they're not going to kill me." They know that Filipinos put up these stores, they put up these businesses to make life easier for them. And believe me, all sides in a civil conflict protect us. So we're a very entrepreneurial race. We're all over the place, and in places that other peoples will not want to work in, either on their own account as entrepreneurs or as wage workers, we're there. And I think Africa is there. And the experience of China, which has been Howard French called it in his book, China's Second Continent, Africa, it's really booming. That's what's happening in Africa. So we've heard the horror stories about Africa, but it's bouncing back. Not just bouncing back, but rising higher than it ever did under the colonial powers. And there's enormous wealth there and many opportunities for us. I'd like us to come in on the ground floor. And nothing like our young diplomats to do that, because they're full of energy and courage and, well, inventiveness.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That's all that I have on this on this budget. And again, thank you to the Secretary for the courtesy of explaining his budget to the committee. And I would endorse the later part, the submission of the budget for consideration of the plenary. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Secretary.
I was going to follow up, but Secretary Go has requested me if he could immediately come in because I think he's got another appointment to go to. Secretary Go is recognized.
Hi, sir. Ginawa niyo na akong secretary uli. Sir.
Well, that's right. I'm sorry. I mean, I speak all the time with the president, and you there act as a secretary, and here you're a senator. So, thank you very much, and I'm sorry, Senator Go.
Hello, sir. Bongo lang po, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Locsin, fellow colleagues, and other distinguished resource persons. I just wanted to express my support for your budget. Let us just ensure that the money will be spent wisely, and those who need it most will be chiefly benefited. We are very much aware that the DFA has been hard at work during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ako po mismo, parati ako nandidistorbo sa inyong opisina pag marami pong humihingi ng tulong ng mga kababayan natin, especially mga OFWs. As of early this month, the DFA has repatriated a total of 204,481 overseas Filipinos, both sea-based and land-based from around the globe. I laud the efforts taken by the department in bringing our heroes home. However, notwithstanding all these praiseworthy undertakings by the DFA, particularly the Office of the Undersecretary for Migrant Workers Affairs, the cracks in our system have been brought to light. There have been perennial gaps in our system that have been highlighted further in this pandemic, particularly when it comes to interagency coordination and response to concerns of overseas Filipinos in distress. Alam ko pong ginagawa ninyo ang lahat sa abot ng inyong makakaya para sumaklolo sa mga Pilipino na apektado ng krisis sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo kasama ang DOLE, OWA, POE at iba pang mga ahensya. Malaki po ang sakripisyo ninyo para gampanan ang inyong mga mandato para sa ating mga Pilipino na kapatid. Your efforts are recognized, but there is always room for improvement. That is why I filed Senate Bill number 1835, which seeks to create the Department of Overseas Filipinos. With this, all overseas Filipinos concerns will be lodged with one and in the same department para po alam na kagad ng ating mga overseas Filipinos kung saan sila tutugon para sa mga pangailangan nila. Hindi po sila mananawagan sa radyo, sa Facebook, kahit saan lang po sila hihingi ng saklolo. But even with the proposed creation of DOOF, we will ensure that the mandate of DFA and the resources you need to fulfill this will not be adversely affected. Ang gusto natin gawin ay mas streamline at responsive ang gobyerno sa pangailangan ng mga tao without taking anything away from the hardworking men and women of existing agencies such as the DFA. Moreover, I would like to commend the department for maintaining our diplomatic ties with all nations and safeguarding the independent foreign policy that our president has directed. Pagpatuloy po sana natin ang pagkakaibigan natin sa lahat ng bansa. Again, Mr. Chair, I fully support the budget of Department of Foreign Affairs and continue to applaud all your initiatives during this very difficult time for the country and for the world. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senator. Thank you so much for your kind words. The credit goes really to all our frontline workers, including those in the Department of Labor. They're working seamlessly together. And also in the beginning, also the Department of Tourism, when we were not just repatriating our people back, but helping foreigners stranded here, and I guess the word is expatriating them back to their home countries, something that their foreign ministers later told me, you have no idea how much goodwill the Philippines got, because frankly, you know, you travel, as far as we're concerned, the foreign minister said, you travel abroad, that's your problem. Getting back here, well, that's your problem. And suddenly we see you bringing our people back to us by every means you can. And I'd like to thank Secretary Berna Romulo Puyat for that, because she really went out of her way, and she deserves a lot of credit for the goodwill we have acquired abroad because of the extra measures we took, not just to bring our people home, but to bring other people back to their countries. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Senator.
Back to Chairman Gordon.
Thank you, Senator Go. Senator Marcos is recognized. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Yes, I do actually have some questions. I'm a bit concerned about the Assistance to Nationals Fund. I know that we've maintained this sum at 1 billion year on year, but this year, of course, as Senator Go mentioned, has been unusual. And I note that almost 70% was already disbursed as early as June of this year. You still have 3 months to go. And we're very concerned that you have only 10 million pesos left. Is that correct?
Yes, I think it's a bit bigger than that. I believe the figure we have here is 20 million.
20 million, yes. But we're scraping the barrel. And are you anticipating the same 204,000? Because the Department of Labor has actually said that they're anticipating quite a few still to be repatriated.
Yeah, yes, we do. We have figures that vary from 177,000,
Oh
but the
boy.
more conservative figure has emerged of maybe 50, 60,000. But the thing is that what we observed here is the jobs that we are losing in the Middle East are actually the better ones. The engineers, because the projects have ended, those higher end and more skilled jobs are being lost and doesn't look like they will come back anytime soon. But there is always need for our domestic workers in the Middle East. This may not be the most, you know, better paying, but
Yeah.
still it's something they can bring home, and they're staying and they're very welcome. And I'm always repeatedly assured by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and all the others. You know, they always say that don't worry, we'll take care of them because they live with us. Then there's no way we can just neglect them, let them get infected, and then well, then the short-sighted way of looking is they also infect us. And he said, and we don't care whether they're regular or irregular workers. We'll stand by them, and that I'm told is true. Also,
Perhaps the solution, Mr. Secretary, perhaps the solution is to train up our domestics for better skilled and higher paid caregivers.
Yeah.
And then they'll be less vulnerable.
That's right. They always, I don't know if this is good to say because they never put down other people, but they say our healthcare workers abroad are the most valued for their professionalism and for a quality that we seem to possess more
Sure
than
of
others.
that, Paul.
Yeah. So yes, the jobs are waiting for them there. We have there's a tug of war going on in the AITF as to how many should be allowed to go. But I do know it's their constitutional right to travel when they want and to work where they find the best terms.
Yes, I just don't want to be caught at the end of the year with the DFA short of repatriation budget. So I think we should transmit to the Mother Committee of Finance the need perhaps to top up this amount, which has always been understood to be a sinking fund or a revolving fund to be maintained at all times at 1 billion. And given the COVID crisis, I think it's important that we do so. The other concern is that the Senate recently approved on third reading the bill expanding the use of legal assistance to include not just migrant workers, but also all overseas Filipinos. The problem is this is clearly not provided in the DFA budget in 2020, nor does it appear in 2021. And I worry that without a budget, the problems of our fellow men and the DFA overseas will just be compounded. We've just passed it, the Legal Assistance Fund. It doesn't occur in 2020, nor in the projections for 2021. I think we need to allocate something for that.
That I've been given two figures. Waiting for SARO is 820 million for the augmentation of the ATN fund under the Bayanihan 2 program, and for the legal assistance fund, 200 million. I would just about do it.
Yes, yes, I think we shall have to transmit that to the Mother Committee to make certain that these amounts are released expeditiously as they're definitely necessary. I noticed also that the FSI, sorry, the Career Development Arm of the department has suffered a reduction of 41.5%. That's quite a large amount, but I was reassured by one of the finance people that this is due to the fact that there were last year non-recurring terminal leave benefits and the exclusion of unfilled positions. Are you going to be able to operate the FSI less 42%?
Yes, Director. Yes, may I refer this to Director Balatbat? She's more cognizant of this issue. Ma'am, please.
Thank you very much, Senator Marcos, for your interest in the operations of FSI. And it's true that we have a big reduction in our budget. It's mostly because uh, our congressional initiative was not
Yes,
released by the DBM to us. These
yes.
were reallocated to COVID-related expenses. So we are hoping that with the support of the Senate Committee on Finance, we could restart the programs that had to be discontinued this year.
What sort of programs were they, Director Balatbat? Because somebody else told me they were just terminal leave benefits and so on, and that you didn't really need the amount. But now you're saying that you actually need these, except that they were for later release being congressional insertions.
Your Honor, they're supporting our programs for foreign language training. That's one of
Oh
the,
dear, that sounds essential. That doesn't sound like a non-recurring effort.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if you would give us your priorities so that we can look for funds if that's possible in these very difficult times. But I think a 42% reduction is a bit drastic. So I was quite alarmed by that.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
very
your
much,
support, ma'am.
Director. Sige po. I also wanted an update on the e-passport project because there's a multi-year allocation for this. I know that this obligation has been ongoing for several years, but I recall in 2019 there was a controversy on a previous contractor who committed passport data theft. Were they held accountable? Were charges filed? Is he still our passport printer?
No, from that time, this is what I recall, is it wasn't that, it was because the contract had terminated.
Yes.
And we were not, apparently there was another group that had wanted to come in under the previous administration. And so they said, well, if you don't want to renew it, then they let it go. And because it was not attended to, the data was lost in their system. Nothing was stolen.
Okay, so it was just lost. So it was just sheer negligence from the transfer or non-renewal of contract.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, there was a bit of negligence there. And also, as I said, if you lose the contract, I can imagine the part of that contractor as well, since you didn't renew it, take care of it yourselves. And that's what happened. But the data was not stolen. And it's being reconstituted even as we speak.
Oh, that's good. So we're okay with that. There's a quite substantial sum. This is a request for information. And they're labeled the International Commitment Funds. It's 2.317 billion. I'm wondering if there's anything we can get from that to allocate to your other items. This is supposed to be for our membership contribution to international organizations. We've heard of the president withdrawing from the ICJ. Are you able to submit to the committee a breakdown of this sum so that we can look at them and review each item?
Yes, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up because of the president has, to the consternation of the world community, which is always wringing its hands about what's happening to the Rohingya. All they do, the Westerners, is wring their hands, but they never do anything. And the president comes up and says, well, why don't you send them over to me? And I'll take care of them. And that commitment is there and has shamed the world because we're the only ones in the tradition of Filipinos taking in the Jews, the Hitler's Holocaust, the White Russians, or the Communist Holocaust.
May I also volunteer?
It boils down to reality. The reality is.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. You're right. It's providing a safe haven is a Filipino tradition. And following President Quezon, if you recall, during the Vietnam War, in the fallout of the withdrawal of the Americans, we also welcomed the boat people to Morong Island, where they prospered, and eventually some of them went to the United States or back to Vietnam. So as you say, it's a long-standing Filipino tradition that we should uphold.
Well, ma'am, I might add also this, that it's to the credit of your father that when the big powers stopped fighting and they abandoned everyone they involved in their fights, he opened the Philippines to take them in because it wasn't, it wasn't as benign as sometimes people who fought that war like to make it seem. They were just left to themselves. They were boat
Yes.
people, and we took them in. Many were killed by pirates in the South China Sea. We took them in. And to this day, there are many, I meet ambassadors who were here at the time of your dad and who say that a great part of their memory and their hearts is in the Philippines because of what we did for the Vietnamese boat people. And many of them are now in San Francisco and all over
Yes,
the
that's right.
Others went to worse places. Those who ended up in Hong Kong were treated like trash, but
Yes,
those in the
that's true.
Philippines have new lives. So that's something we want to do. Okay, on the question of international commitments, I remember when I was new in the UN, and then I was called in to be congratulated for our contributions. And along with other countries who had given millions of dollars, etc., there I was. They never discriminated, and they honored the Philippines by telling me, "Thank you so much for what you gave." Later on, I found out it was $10,000 only. But it gives us prestige because to give counts. And when it
Yes,
comes
I
to
understand.
I would like us to commit to preserve our tradition and honor as those we're practically the Statue of Liberty in this part of the world, to take in the wretched of the earth, maybe $100,000. And one of the things I can tell you about the previous administration that I particularly, well, they were not exactly friends of mine, but I particularly admired was that when something happened in Japan, what's the first thing anybody will say? Oh, well, they're very rich anyway. No. Previous administration committed a huge amount of money and said we're helping in that catastrophe. I think it was the tsunami. So that's something. It's
Right.
part of it. It's our prestige, and this is something I said we have to maintain the legacy of the boat people.
Yes, thank you. If we could have more information on that, perhaps we could generate some interest in the Congress to top up the amount. I simply have two more questions. One is a level of concern about the Presidential Commission on Visiting Forces now that it has been restored. I understand that the budget has been moved from OP and now it is with DFA, but I don't see any sum dedicated to the PCVF in the budget for 2021.
I believe there is a sum there of 28.09, but I said to reflect the fact that the DFA has been abrogated. What I did on the instructions of the president when the power vacuum was created by the abrogation of the VFA was, greater tension in the South China Sea between the two great powers.
Yes.
And then I said, I told the president about this and well, suspend the abrogation.
Right.
So I did. I gave the statement. I suspended, and in my statement, when I suspended the abrogation, I said, believe me, no power in the region is anything but relieved that we have suspended the abrogation. But the president's order stays, and I must respect him. I am his alter ego, and therefore the PCVF's budget must reflect the fact that we have abrogated the VFA. We have merely suspended it, so I think I cut it down to 12 million.
To 12 million now.
Yes.
And you think that will be adequate, even assuming that we have counterpart expenses?
Yes. That's adequate.
Okay, that's good to hear. And final last question. There was a news item earlier today regarding a resolution of the UNHRC being downgraded from an outright investigation to a technical assistance and capability building for the domestic efforts on human rights. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. When I came into both the UN and then later as SFA, my argument was what's happening out there. One is some of the figures are completely incredible.
Yes.
The other is this. It's not in our interest to let these things happen. If they happen, perhaps I use the metaphor, we were cleaning with a dirty broom. And we've all had experience with that. there may have been mistakes at the beginning, but I said what we need is technical help. Of course, the Agnes Calabard and the crowd just wanted a lynch mob, but I said no, I'm not going to cooperate with that. We need help, and we're willing to do it, but we're not going to ask for help and get it, but it will be in the form of people coming in who already prejudged what happened in the Philippines. I said no. If I see any of their faces, I myself will block them from coming in. What we need is technical cooperation. So I brought this case to Vienna, where we have the technical people on drug control are there, mostly led by the Russians. And then and from there, it started to creep on that perhaps instead of naming and shaming, especially without evidence, why don't we help them? Because I said, do you think it's in our interest to fight drugs if we were really bad people? If we were bad people, we would promote drugs the way it's happening in certain Central American countries. No, we're fighting the most lucrative business in the world. And we're doing it because we want to end this scourge. So please help us. And now they're listening. We took a beating before, but
Yes.
I said nobody is to attend a single National Day celebration, a single cocktail. If you really want to get drunk, you buy yourself a bottle of gin and drink in the office. But nobody is going to any National Day until these people learn manners. And they did. And this is the result.
So
But
that's
we're going
great.
to have to do
So,
our part. We're going to have to do our part.
yes, congratulations then. So Madame Bachelet will not have an investigation after all.
Yes, but we're going to have to cooperate in getting the capacity to address the drug problem in a way that is, well, you know.
I'm sure that will be helpful in any case, particularly for our law enforcers and even the barangays at the grassroots level. They would welcome that since many of them have very little drug training, in fact. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. That was very enlightening. Thank you, my Vice Chair Gordon, for the generous amount of time.
You're welcome, and thank you for the good questions, very good questions. We acknowledge the presence of Senator Gatchalian. Senator Gatchalian, do you have any questions? Senator Gatchalian? Sherwin? Senator Pacquiao, do you have any questions? Senator Pacquiao? Well, if there are no questions, I'd like to ask a few questions myself. Thank you very much, as usual, Senator Locsin, for the very candid and very clear way of answering the questions. Obviously, Sabah will always be part of our assertion. It may not be very actively pursued or loudly pursued, but nonetheless, it's going to be there. Do you see any end to this, or are there any efforts being made to try and see our way clear in getting back Sabah?
It was put in the back burner with the assumption to power of the Aquino administration, and it was never put forward again. So I think because of the cavalier way we were treated in that incident, on just a casual mention of what's our claim, as if it was already part of another country's, I think I slapped them back hard enough for them to realize, be careful. And then, of course, there were appeals to ASEAN unity. I said, you know where you can bring ASEAN unity? You can shove it elsewhere, because my country first, ASEAN unity, somewhere far behind. And I think once we've made that clear, then people will start, you know, taking a more realistic view that we are not a country to be ignored. We are certainly not in the region of great powers, except for China and the United States. So please, you know, treat us with more respect. And who knows, there are, by the way, political developments going on in both, that I can't mention it, the Sabah and then Sarawak and the others. Apparently there are other political movements there. We may have to adjust to that. But no, for now, it's ours and we want it.
So the attitude is that it belongs to us, although we're not taking a very active and direct assertion. And we're waiting for better times, for better personalities that can talk about this in a more civilized way and without any saber rattling Is that the policy that we're having right now?
Well, I'm starting it. We had no policy before this. As I said, it went to sleep when Ms. Aquino took over and stayed asleep until this incident, which I could not let go. And now I would like it to come back to the situation, I have to say it, the situation when Marcos was president and we were respected in Southeast Asia as a power in our own right. And that will come, as the good senator himself has said, that will come when we build up our armed forces. Everybody's for peace, but remember what the good senator himself said, civis pacem para bellum.
That's
So
right.
I think it's time to go back to that. And others might feel unhappy about it, but let's face it, it was in the time of Marcos when we really were a power to be reckoned.
And I agree with you on that one because obviously that was the position to take that it really belongs to us. And at the same time, I commend you for having been very forthright that it has not been put to sleep by you or by the administration, and that the Malaysians should not think that it's theirs forever, especially since we have quite a bit of Filipinos there. But I was chagrined when they were asking that we put up a consular post there. We cannot put a consular post there, as you also agreed with me on that one.
Never,
It is
never.
obviously our country.
That's
And we
one of the
don't have-
first things that was proposed to me when I became foreign secretary. Can we put up a consulate there for convenience? No. I said, if you
Good.
have to go hundreds of miles in mud, I was telling my diplomats, you do it. But we're not going to put up a consulate there. Try to get malaria for all I care.
Yes. In fact, I say this because sometimes I'm disconcerted by the fact that, you know, as a chairman of the Red Cross for and a member of the Red Cross for the last 53 years, I'm always concerned when we take back our overseas Filipino workers, when they are mistreated, when they're underpaid. I've always been very vocal about that. That's why I worked with Secretary Ople and Secretary Romero at the time when 2 Filipinos were killed because their passports were taken and they jumped out and they were only being paid $100 to $150, which I thought was ridiculous. So that now I believe it's gone up to $400. I don't know if that's being implemented. However, on the matter of Sabah, we treat them as our countrymen that has just visited another part of our country, and yet we get reports that some of them are being lashed, being maltreated. And how do we go about addressing that fact, Mr.
Well,
Mr.
to begin with, I have instructed our ambassador in Kuala Lumpur is that he is to complain about the treatment of our people. But don't say the treatment of our people in your country, but say the mistreatment of our people. And that I have instructed my diplomats that your first interest is not to be comfortable in the host country. Many diplomats think that's what their job is, to become popular, to be able to go to the cocktail parties. No. In fact, the more you're disliked, probably the better the job you're doing. And that's what I expect. For as long as our people are maltreated in any country, then I expect my diplomats to be real jerks in that host country. If they say, okay, get out, then I say, get your ambassador out also. Because believe me, we can live without them.
Yes, and I think that we can get more,
We need regional unity.
and indeed we can have the our self-respect as a nation when we are assertive and are not afraid to say our views and are not afraid to protect our people when they are being mistreated anywhere in the world, including that part of the Philippines called Sabah. Because I've had occasion to know that some of them, while going out on the boat, are pushed around, kicked, or even the lash is used against them, and that's something that really disconcerts me. And there must be something done about that by way of a communication to the Malaysians that they cannot treat a Filipino, or for that matter, any nationality, any national of another country, for that matter. And I think that must be communicated. Would you agree with that, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And you have my support, and I'm sure the rest of the Senate will support you. Let me just ask you another question. Uh, Obviously, as you know, I try as much as possible to try and get the right training for our ambassadors, the right representation in cars, for an example, or even the chancelleries or the diplomatic homes that we have, or the standard of living allowances, and that has improved in the past, and I think it should even be improved some more. Uh, However, if your folks will tell you that we have tried and we put in money for language, which is important, especially in Arab countries, or for that matter, countries like China or Japan, not only for interpretative purposes, but most especially so they can read the newspapers and they can go to the cocktail circuit and listen to what is being said and be able to interpret it. And over and above that, of course, get additional briefings that will compare their observation in their post when they get back here. And of course, they do make reports like any other ambassador or any other member of any embassy in the world. Whenever they come across something new, they make reports. I'm sure we do that, don't we, Mr.
Yes,
Ambassador?
we do. Yes, we do. And when some, I'd like to inform the Senate, which is the Congress's foreign policy arm, that should there be any issue that you wish to be especially informed about, we will supply you with those reports. You are in the legislature, the foreign policy arm. So that will be done. About language training, I agree with what your earlier suggestion in another meeting we had, that first the most urgent is to find means to raise to have a certain fund in order to hire Filipinos or even foreigners who speak that language and can interpret accurately, because we just one of our OFWs was acquitted, not pardoned, but acquitted of a murder charge, and she was charged with murder simply because she was there. She had also been attacked with her employer, but also because a Filipino had offered himself to be her translator, and when his transcript was read in court, it had her admitting to the murder. I said, so you know what I mean? The only reason why she got out was because we had a great Arab lawyer, a good and decent man. So maybe we should have funds for that in order to hire people who are already natives to the language, because I'm not interested in creating a bunch of polylingual diplomats simply for the pleasure of being able to drop a few phrases here and there in a cocktail party. In fact, I think because some of the most difficult languages, Arabic foremost, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, those who commit to take those special lessons to learn that must know that their careers will be circumscribed to those areas. Because I don't need them in Washington, D.C. I certainly don't want them in Paris.
Mr. Secretary, I often ask this question, and I'm going to ask this again. In the past, we had under President Marcos a language, an Arabian expert who passed on already. I forget his name. Peck. I think, can you help me out?
Yes, of course.
Peck Castro, Pacifico
Castro.
Castro.
Pacifico Castro. He was our Arab expert. He could speak Arabic very well. And more importantly, not just speak, because language is not just the exercise of the tongue to be able to communicate, but the ability of the mind to discern what are the customs, habits, traditions in the mind of the individual concerned, the foreigner concerned. And that is why I was going to ask again, who is our Arabic expert today? Who is our Chinese expert today within the embassy? Do we have any?
Well, we have one. He's coming with me to China tomorrow morning. He's a young man, comes from my province of Negros. But yeah, you're right. A core of language experts. We need to build that up now in every major language. As I said, I'm not going to be satisfied if they have just anyone who says he wants to be an expert in this part of the world had better be able to speak Spanish in Latin America like a Latin American. Anyone who wants to say he's going to go to the Middle East to be an expert had better speak Arabic like he was an Arab poet. Other than that, I don't care for people who learn about foreign cultures by reading books in English, because the language reveals the soul of that area.
And that's precisely what I mean. You have to have a specialist, not only on the ground, but also in the desk in the Foreign Office. I mean, so that they can very well exchange ideas and exchange opinions and interpretations of certain trends in the country that our ambassador represents. And that's why in America, as you know, they have even here, we have the Asia Pacific desk. In America, they used to have a Philippine desk, but now it's a bunch into a Southeast Asian desk. But it's important that there will always be experts. And to do that, we should really put in the money, put our money where our mouth is, literally, so we can speak not just the language of money that has produced an expert, but try to tap into the university. And also at the other side, on the other side of the coin, when you go to a foreign country, there is the Filipino diaspora that you can mine, meaning to say there are Filipino, just like we have Filipino Ivory Coast basketball players like in the Ateneo and other places. They have African Filipino players. We should have African Filipino youngsters whom we can have educate and then have them join the Foreign Office, and then maybe get somebody who was born or who grew up in Saudi Arabia or any of the countries of the Gulf, etc., so that we could use them both at the home desk and at the same time send them to the embassy and even pretend that they don't speak the language so that they can get more. I think that's important. Don't you think so, sir?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think that we should, the academic requirements for diplomatic posts should be made more flexible, so you can get, as you said, say people who have worked in the Middle East, or like the young girl who was acquitted. She was born in the Middle East, grew up there in Arab schools. So why, although her academic background is not the same as ours, probably better, there's no reason why she cannot be incorporated into the diplomatic corps. You just have to open, because that's what we are. We're foreign affairs. We're not, we're not here to project our own academic system. But if anyone shows any proficiency, they should have the same chance to serve their country with their expertise. And if it happens to be a foreign language with which they grew up, and believe me, nobody can study that.
That's correct.
And I think we offered you a study on how we can do that, and you'll get it.
We don't need legislation to that, and even if we do, we'll try to do that. But at the same time, I think that is a policy that you yourself can expand into, and if the necessary funds are required, this representation being the sponsor of the Department of Foreign Affairs, you and I can take a look at where we can get some more money to allow us to be able to hire these people right away for starters, and then get scholars later on to be sent in certain places, so that when they come back, they know the history, they know the culture, they know how not only to speak the language, but they know how to read the mind or the trend in a foreign country, because this is very important, particularly for China, particularly for the Middle East, where we have so many people out there, or for that matter, in a place like Kazakhstan, where we can get some more oil, or whether we can send some mangoes or other things to export. I think this is very important, and I would be favored if you would give me some sort of a listing of what we would need, and I'm sure we can get the support of the Senate, especially if we're able to explain that this is a very, very important addition to the armor of diplomacy of this country.
That's right, sir. I'll give you that study, and you and I can go over it and see how we can, and to the extent the administrative code does not allow us, then I'm going to ask your help with the help of the Senate and my friends in the House, to see how we can make it part of the DFA system legally. So
Thank
there's
you.
no question about how it's spent.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I have additional questions. I hope you have the patience for it. I
Yes.
have I often get even now text messages from people in the Middle East and from their families here who are trapped because they lost their jobs because of the COVID pandemic, but they're not being allowed because they need the visa to get out, and some of them are very far away from the embassy. One group I contact usually the not the foreign office, but the Hans Kakdak of the Province OWA, and so far he has not been able to. He's been able to contact them, but he's not been able to be brought to bring them home. And some of them even have infants because both of them went there and both of them lost their jobs, and they have a infant daughter and they have not renewed the passport. Now, this is a little thing that I think we can talk about to us, within us, but it's really a big thing for our families here who are anxiously waiting or hoping that they would not get sick of COVID and die there in a foreign country. Is there any way we can get to talk to the OWA and the DFA to make sure that we can get them out faster? I'm aware that many are still left in that situation, and the Senate would like to know how many are there so that we could support the DFA in their efforts to try and get these people back if they have to go back.
Well, I'm gonna give you to Sara Areola, who can expound on this more from direct experience. We have an estimated number of 25,184 stranded Filipinos. We'll try to get them out. Sometimes they cannot leave and get an exit visa because they have debts they haven't paid. And although we don't like to announce it, we do to the extent we can pay off those debts, and then frankly beg the host country to please let them go because there's no job for them, and we'll just take care of them and bring them back. But Sarah, would you like to explain the situation more?
Yes, Mr. Secretary. Your Honor, I just like to explain that as of now, we're still looking at around 47,000 Filipinos stuck in the Middle East.
47?
Around 47,000, Your Honor.
Wow.
Many of them, we're just waiting for our SARO actually. We'd like to thank the Senate for giving us 820 million for an additional assistance to Nationals Fund for this year alone to be able to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, unlike in the other regions in the Middle East, almost everyone is under kafala, the sponsorship system. And they cannot come home unless they're allowed by their original employers. Some of the employers will ask us to pay for the deployment costs, which as of now we're also doing, but of course quietly. Because if we don't do that, we won't be able to bring them home. If Your Honor if you have OFWs who want to come home, please let us know and we will ask our embassy to go to them if they cannot go to the embassy, Your Honor. But as long as once we get our SARO, Your Honor, we will resume all our flights because we've been chartering already a lot of flights. We've already chartered 57 flights using our original ATN fund. Most flights were from the Middle East, Your Honor. But there are more and more people who become jobless, and there are a lot of people who do not have who became undocumented because they do not have jobs anymore and their sponsors already let go of them, Your Honor.
But the repatriation cost, I don't know if this is correct. From the standpoint of beneficiaries in legal assistance, you have 5,461. And the amount involved is 118,600,000, which only applies to 58.7% to total. Is that to total funded, or what does it mean?
Your Honor, as of September 30, we only have around a little over 19 million left for our assistance to Nationals Fund, Your Honor. And but we brought home more than 208,000 Filipinos. We are expecting at least
We tested them all in the Red Cross for COVID. We were really overwhelmed. So I was wondering what was happening, but we tested over 190,000 to the from the Middle East for COVID. But you say you still have 47,000 left, and it sounds like you don't have any more money. And I don't think we should allow this situation to simper. And we should try and get DBM to try and release the necessary sorrow so we can get them home. Of course, the other thing that I was going to suggest is the kafala system. Is there any way we can engage in very stern diplomacy to try and get rid of the kafala system? Unless this is being done in the other countries, I know it's going to be difficult. But is there a way we can, moderate the impact of the kafala system, for example, during these emergencies?
Your Honor, we, of course, together with the Secretary, when he was still the permanent representative in New York, we were at the forefront in the negotiations of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, and we were able to put provisions, anti-kafala provisions there. We're also a partner of Bahrain in proposing an alternative, which is the Flexi Visa system. And fortunately, more than 1,000 Filipinos during the pandemic were able to receive $230 each from the Kingdom of Bahrain as a
I'm familiar with Bahrain. They're very kind and supportive, or maybe they have their own reasons for that. But I do know that they were one of the first to stop the confiscation of passports, if I'm not mistaken, and the kafala system. The other one, I think, is Dubai, and I'm not sure if Dubai is already involved. There's another country involved with that. So why can't like the rapprochement going on between Israel and Saudi Arabia, Israel and UAE happen to the kafala system insofar as the Philippines and the Middle Eastern countries? Can we not try and accelerate this process so that there will be more friendship between our countries, the countries that we deal with?
Your Honor, before the Duterte administration, no country of origin will even mention kafala before the United Nations. But since the president, was very adamant that the Filipino is a slave to no one, to anywhere and everywhere, we have been already talking to our counterparts, and there's a step-by-step process of development in the Middle East, Your Honor, like the abolition of the exit visas also in Qatar, and UAE they're improving their system. We actually, Your Honor, we've found out that it's very economic in nature because it's more cost-effective actually for the employers to maintain the kafala system. So there's still a lot of resistance from their population, but the governments are willing to change. It's just that the population is still resisting because of the economic implications of the total abolition of kafala. But little by little, the countries in the Middle East are starting to institute reforms to do away with the system. But we are confident, Your Honor, that it will happen eventually, because so long as there are countries are already instituting reforms, and IOM and even ILO are looking at them already and also giving pressure for them to institute reforms in their own countries, Your Honor.
Yes, even within the Red Cross, this representation conducted a couple of conferences. One was in Qatar, and that's why I'm familiar that Qatar was one of the countries that are doing it. And I hosted one here, but unfortunately it has faltered because of the COVID. But I'm sure if we do so, and I was quite disappointed with the IOM because I was hoping they would be a little bit more aggressive insofar as this is concerned. But I am kind of sad that they weren't as aggressive because there are many people. In fact, when I spoke in Qatar, I remember there was a Qatari school principal who stood up and heaped praises upon this representation. I'm not saying this to pat myself in the back, but he heaped praises upon us for saying that this was really humanitarian. This has never been done. That you speak in our country with such candidness, and we need to listen to you. So there is an awful lot of opportunity, I believe, to keep on being aggressive, so that we can do so. If it is a question of economics, I'm sure there will be a solution, because I understand the Kapala system really works primarily in the construction and domestic sectors in the GCC countries. But I can also commend the president when he took a very strong position against Kuwait, when those two Filipinos were hacked to death and placed in a freezer. Or for that matter, I commend Secretary Ople when we discussed the matter of people jumping out of the window during the bombing of Lebanon, and we were looking for them from the Red Cross, and we found them. Unfortunately, when we found them, they were cold and dead in the hospital, and their passports had been withheld from them. They were kept in a room, and they jumped out. And of course, you know that even if they were able to escape, two ladies running around a war zone without a passport are very, very vulnerable game to any abuser in some of these countries. So there really is a very high sense of urgency that we become very active and try to get other countries, like I think Indonesia has the same problem. The Indians also have the same problems, and if we tie up with them, maybe I'm talking to my hat here, but there's no harm in trying to get more voices to gently nudge our friends in the Middle East. And there are a lot of very kind people in the Middle East. That's why I make it a point to attend cocktail parties of the Middle East, so that I can really understand them and really get them to help, and we help one another. So by that experience, I realized that if we keep on engaging them in a friendly way, they actually really help a lot more, especially when there are disasters here in our country. And for that matter, the Duterte experience shows that if we engage them in a very stern and a very committed way, the Kuwaiti government also gave ground, significant ground, if I remember correctly, to the fact that they must treat our people well. So I would advise the Foreign Office again. You're being led by a very, very strong and very knowledgeable individual whom I know, to give him the support. And certainly, for my part, I will try to do as much as I can. I'm sure Frank Dillon, we all come from Accra, and of course, Majaldea, Secretary Majaldea comes from Accra. There are quite a few of us who can join together in making our voices stronger, so that we can make a difference in behalf of our Filipino people. I have families and families. I think in Al-Dahar, if I'm not mistaken, it's in my phone. They're caught there, some of them with their children. And I will certainly call you, Sarah, if you don't mind, so you can help Hans Kapdak get their way out. There are other people, of course, and I will try to list down the names. They're all on my cell phone, and I usually push it to Hans Kapdak. I hate to do this thing personal, but it is also part of our official letters de cachet to make sure that the people involved, such as you, get to know this, so we can help solve their problem.
Senator Gordon?
Yes.
Yes, well, I must say this, Yusek Arreola is a bit too modest. Neither Indonesia nor any of our surrounding countries can teach us anything. In fact, the reason we took the lead role in the IOM Global Compact on Migration was that my instructions in the United Nations came from my acquaintance with Secretary Arreola, who had, can I say this? Who had the foreign minister of Bahrain eating out of her hand. And that man, she instructed him on what was a decent way to conduct migrant, to handle migrant labor. And he spearheaded the adoption of laws that are really advanced. When we were handling the Global Compact, I told my people, don't tell them what is good, what you want, about the future, etc. All of those dreams. No, tell them this is what Filipinos got working with Germany. These are the rights of Filipinos in Germany, and they get the same rights as German nationals. And then in Bahrain, thanks to Sarah, she could say to them, we're not asking for the moon, we're not asking for dreams, we're asking for what we got from an Arab state already. And that's how we ended up leading that movement. We've got people there like Hans Leo Kakdak who are really taking the lead. They're actually doing it already and setting, better than talk, setting the example for the rest to follow. So we've got a good team out here.
You're so very correct, Secretary Locsin, and I have no complaints about Sarah Ariola, whom I know, having been part of my committee in the Senate, the Blue Ribbon Committee, and I'm sure she can have the Bahrain Foreign Minister eat out of her hand. I have no doubt about that. But that's the same experience I have with the Bahrainis. In fact, I always kid them. I met the prince there, and he would run in Subic, and he even gave us two training centers in Subic and in Leyte for Hayan. And at the same time, when I got there, he gave me a horse, and I was being very proud of a horse that he gave me. I've always wanted an Arabian horse, and when the horse came, it was in a frame. It was very, very heavily framed in a picture that I keep. I can't even hang it because it keeps falling down. But they are indeed very, very helpful, especially when you tell them that other countries are being done, that is part of our duties as friends to adapt to a higher standard of behavior, a higher standard of friendship. And I congratulate Sarah Ariola for that, and I hope you can include us in as one of your fans and supporters. Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, I hope I didn't get you into trouble.
Well, Sarah knows better how I think, so I think she knows. Right, Sarah? I think that I have other questions, but I'm really satisfied with the DFA. I have no problems. In fact, I think that we're short and giving you more funds. And like I told you, you gentlemen and folks, including the secretary, if there's anything we can do and find our way clear in adding more funds especially for having a periscope in the mind and having a very good communication capability to train our ambassadors, not just the house, not just the home of the ambassador or the car of the ambassador or the office of the embassy, but the matter of the very important software of skill sets that will make you more effective. We are at your disposal. I think the Senator Gatchalian is back in the hall now, and I will recognize him. Senator Sherwin, are you ready now? Senator Sherwin Gatchalian? Oh, wala ka na dito. Are you on mute? I don't think he's here. Are there any other questions in the air? Who would like any questions to ask any questions of the Department of Foreign Affairs? If there are none, Senator Marcos, are you still there? I think we can conclude this hearing, and we will be now ready to approve the budget of the DFA and its attached agencies to be submitted to the plenary, subject to whatever funding we can possibly get you, so to make your jobs a lot more professional, a lot more efficient, and a lot more facilitative. So on that note, the budget of the DFA is deemed submitted to the plenary. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Secretary Ted. Thank you to all my friends there. I can see a lot of faces there that I know from the past. I congratulate you for your patriotism, your hard work, your dedication. I've always been a big fan of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Mabuhay. Mabuhay kayong lahat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Attorney Joe Mark, just make the necessary ramifications so this is formal, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon.
Ayan, sila nag-cut na.
Eh,